going on, everybody? Welcome to the NBA Up to Lock show here. Hosting duties for old DC, not used to it, so it'll be we'll learn as we go. We're talking the 8-game NBA slate, obviously. You're on March 14th. Thanks for joining us here on the Run Pure Sports channel. I'm DC, of course, joined today by JT Hayes and Rubio Dimes. We'll throw it to you first, JT Hayes. How you doing on this Tuesday afternoon?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little bit bummed. It looks like the Spurs and the Pistons are going to play their 136th game apiece. Seems like they're on every slate, but can't make a pain in the ass about it. Just got to deal with it. Pistons obviously on a back-to-back. Spurs suck. So it's an interesting slate, though. There's some decisions to be made early. We were talking about it before we came on. That news about Damian Lillard, as I call him, is pretty big because if he's in, you want to play guards against this Knicks team, the way this defense has been performing, especially out on this long West Coast trip. And if he's out, we know that Anthony Simons disappointed a lot of people the other night, but man, 6,900 ding for Anthony against this Knicks defense. But I don't know, DC Rubio, I don't know if I can wait on my main team at least for those guys because you've got other great spots, Darius Garland, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. The Nets have been playing well. Is this a bounce back spot for Mikal Bridges? Lots of really, really interesting pieces here on this slate. So I'm excited to get into it with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that time of year in NBA where, I know JT, you and I are big baseball guys. Rubio, you are too. We're kind of looking forward to opening day and the start of NBA playoffs, right? Like this NBA season, it certainly does drag on a little bit toward the end. We see a lot of teams with diverging incentives, right? Like we see teams like the Pistons, like the Spurs, who are kind of in that race to the bottom. And then you see teams, like the Blazers are kind of just barely hanging on the playoff spot. But there are a bunch of teams still. One of the first games we'll talk about, Cleveland and Charlotte. Again, it's kind of a perfect example of teams with diverging incentives. Cleveland battling hard for playoff positioning. Charlotte going the opposite way, obviously, with the season-ending injury to LaMelo and all that. So, yeah, it's, for a lot of the year in NBA, you're not really looking at motivations for the teams. For at least kind of the first half, you can kind of predict the minutes pretty well. But you get to this time of the year, Rubio, and even the teams, Pistons, I think, are kind of the primary example over the last week or so. Even the teams that you look and you say, oh, these guys should be guaranteed their minutes, doesn't always turn out that way, right? We saw just yesterday, Killian Hayes, what he put up, 24 fantasy points in the first quarter, I think, something like that or close to it. Hardly did anything the rest of the game. So yeah, it's hard to trust some of these teams, but yeah, we'll break all the games down. We will go kind of a combination of the Up to Lock show, which is usually run by JSU Holden. We take listener questions, kind of break down all the late breaking news. We'll do a combination of that and kind of the normal Hardwood show where we go game by game. So we'll still do a game by game here. We'll answer questions as we go. We'll kind of combine those to the RPS member Discord because there'd just be too many in the normal YouTube chat. So that's how we'll run the show. Rubio, we'll throw it to you. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I mean, I just got bumped out of the soccer cash line. So, despite you guys talking, I wasn't listening. I was just tilted. And I got Kurt here as well. He's behind the green screen, laying in bed, waiting for me. We're having a good time here. This guy is just wild here. We're having a good time. I mean, like you guys said, there's a lot of good spots. We just got the Jamal Murray news at least, so we don't have to wait on that. Maybe it was coming out at 7 or not. So kind of takes it's a bad spot anyway, but I was having Bruce Brown. I was even fiddling with Reggie Jackson and stuff like that. But at least we don't have to worry about that right now. Like you guys mentioned, it's a lot of randomness with a lot of teams tanking. Like even Portland has this Suedo tanking. They aren't committed to it fully, but it's clear that they are. And even the Thunder too. I think there's one goal for the Thunder for the remainder of the season. That's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to get first team All NBA. I think we're gonna have to start looking at individual awards. That's something that we did down the stretch last year that had a lot of success was the Jokic Embiid MVP pursuit. It felt like those guys were going off every time. We could absolutely have studs that we have faith in. I feel like we have the same thing here. I do like Porzingis, I do like Davis, but then you have guys who are just chasing accolades, and like, not saying Dame or Shai are two guys who are going to go out there me first, but they're going to get their numbers, and it feels like they are getting their numbers every night. I feel like whenever they play, they're going to be out there for a full minutes load. It feels like their price came down just a little bit too, and that's probably where I'm going to be targeting at. And, you know, the Cavs value, it's going to be a good time. I'm looking forward to it. Anytime that I get to play a couple Cavaliers against the Hornets, it's always a good time.
Yeah. Speaking of Cavaliers, we will start with that game. We'll go by the DraftKings order of games. And so we'll start with Cleveland and Charlotte. These two teams did just play in their last game together. So we did kind of get to see a preview of tonight. Although for that game, Donovan Mitchell was in. He is out for this game. So obviously a big change for Cleveland. They were missing Jarrett Allen for that game. He is also out tonight. Evan Mobley moved over to start at the 5. I assume that'll be the case. Haven't seen starting lineups, but feel pretty confident in that one. I believe it'll be Karis LeVert who enters the starting lineup for Donovan Mitchell. Cleveland 5.5-point favorites here. Total of 218.5. We'll stick with you, Rubio, here. You said, playing a couple Cavs. I personally think you need at least a couple Cavs in your lineup, and perhaps even going to your namesake, Mr. Ricky Rubio himself, sitting there at 3,300 on DraftKings, playing 20 to 25 minutes a night over the last 3 games. Matchup can't really get much better than it does against Charlotte. Those guard spots are precious tonight, and there's no shortage of value. So I don't think you have to jam Rubio in there if you don't want to at 3,300. Talk to me about Garland, Rubio, LeVert, Mobley. Those are the 4 that I'm looking. You can talk about, any of the ancillary pieces if you want to, and then anything on the Charlotte side you're looking at, Rubio.
I mean, you hit the hammer on the nail there. I mean, you look at Garland under 8K and like coming off a slight injury, but then he plays 39 minutes in his return. Like, we don't have to worry about that. Under 8K just feels too cheap. But like you said, guard is loaded. Becomes like a little bit of a thing where if you want to get a little different, but I find it hard pressed that Garland gets under 40 here, and he's just been showing 50 plus upside all the time. He's one of my guys. I always love playing him, especially with the usage that he'll get without Donovan Mitchell. I don't have the stats exactly in front of me, but he just automatically just gets that usage flowing towards him. And then it goes to Karis LeVert. This is where it gets a little trickier too, because I think Garland's a slam dunk play. But Karis LeVert at 5K, you can kind of make the case maybe I don't want to waste a guard spot here, because like you said, guard spots are precious. And it depends on how your build goes. I mean, it's really tough to fade Karis LeVert if you're building like a cash team. Like 34 minutes, 35 minutes, probably what you can expect. His usage is always up there. And but Donovan Mitchell is the biggest usage guy on the team. So just instant improvement, 5K. You can't go wrong with him. I'm probably not going to go with Rubio here just because Garland kind of fills in that main ball handling role. And even though Donovan Mitchell does a lot of that, I don't see myself spending up at all. Like he's not as much of a necessary piece as he was last Friday. I think that's when he got like 25 minutes. I can just see him kind of plateauing there. And I don't think 18 to 20 is enough. I think, no matter who I play, you got guys who are like Eugene Omarui. He's projected like 26, for the Pistons at a forward spot just above him. I feel like I need 25 plus upside no matter who I play in any spot tonight. And Ricky Rubio just doesn't fill that void. We know how Biggs crushed the Hornets. Mobley without Jarrett Allen. God, that Mobley tag is gonna have a lot of people kind of hesitating a little bit, but that'll get you a little bit different. He's not going to be a huge like chalk piece. Like, no one wants to spend 8.1K for Mobley, but if anyone has like even like 2016 with a few stocks kind of upside, it's him. So I think 2 Cavs definitely are going to be in my lineup. Probably won't go above that because it is kind of a large slate, but definitely the move tonight.
Yeah, JT, we saw Mobley. They obviously just played this game. Mobley did get the start at center. And this was on Sunday night, I believe, Sunday. He didn't do that great, right? Like certainly underperformed what I expected him to do, but he did get 39 minutes, including all 24 minutes of the second half. The Cavaliers played a 7-man rotation in the second half. Robin Lopez never came in for Mobley in the second half. They didn't even use Cedi Osman. And that was with Donovan Mitchell in there. I think they had like 49 points, maybe 52 at halftime. And it seemed like they kind of figured out the Charlotte Hornets defense in the second half. Man, with Mitchell out, I mean, LeVert played 35 minutes off the bench in that game in the starting lineup now. I mean, Garland played 39. Like, I think this game does stay close, and it might because Cleveland's pretty short-handed, right? Like, yeah, the guys that we want to play are good plays, but the other guys that play, like Okoro, Stevens, Dean Wade, literally those guys' role in the offense is to stand in the corner and space it out for the guys that we want to play. So I feel pretty good about this Cavs team. I think you can play the kind of the big four that we've mentioned all in one lineup. I think they've all got to have big games here. Garland, I think, is the best play among them, followed by Mobley, LeVert, and Rubio. That's how I rank the four. JT, how do you rank the four big Cavs, and are you looking at any of the other pieces and any run backs with Charlotte here if you are going to a kind of a Cavalier stack like I think I'm planning to?
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about these back-to-backs in NBA throughout the season. They really crept up last year. Was the first time we saw them on the schedule. One of the things we saw last year was that the games didn't exactly go the same way in the second game, right? And the theory there was if a player went off in the first game, you could probably expect a little bit of regression in the second game. This is a different situation, though. Donovan Mitchell is out now. Jared Allen remains out now. So that's a lot of usage to go around. I think I rank these guys Garland, Mobley, and then LeVert, really, for me. I think the problem with Rubio is not you, Rubio, but Ricky Rubio on the Cleveland Cavaliers is he's point guard only. And when you look at point guard here tonight, outside of Garland, you mentioned the Detroit game where they're shorthanded. There are some spend ups at point guard that I'm really interested in tonight. And there's some cheaper positions at the power forward in particular, at least one that you mentioned in Omarui, however you say his name. But I mean, for me, when I look at LeVert, despite the fact that Mitchell is now out, and of course, Jared Allen is now out, it's that $5K price tag. And what I've seen him do when he started, the ceiling here is maybe 40, right? Yeah. And 40 would be great at $5K, but the floor is 27, 28. And so with all this value, the question that I've been asking myself as I've been looking to put together my lineups is, let's start with Garland and Mobley, but I can get that almost similar production, definitely points per dollar production that I would get out of LeVert for a little bit cheaper in some of these other plays. So I think for me, I'm looking at two at least in tournaments, and that would be Garland and Mobley, not opposed to using LeVert, of course, at all. But I just think you've got to take a look at the context of the slate here. Detroit is shorthanded. They're playing the Wizards. They're shorthanded. The Spurs, I don't want to play Spurs if I don't have to on any given slate, but you have to realize and say, okay, yeah, they are without the two guys who usually would play point guard, at least for the most part of this season. Devin Vassell is back, but that's the point here is I don't want to get too heavy on the Cavs because there are decisions to come later on in the night.
I think that makes sense. I think you guys maybe convinced me that maybe Garland, LeVert, and Rubio, all three is too much. Partly because, Rubio really thrives when he's like the only true point guard on the court, right? Because he's not that great of a shooter or scorer. He really needs the ball in his hands. But because of the makeup of Cleveland's roster and who they're going to play today, he's going to have to share the court with one of Garland or LeVert at all times. And probably for significant minutes, all three of those guys are going to be on the court. And, it's going to run through Garland, I think, is the better player among, obviously, Garland and Rubio at this point. So good point there. But, yeah, Cavs certainly strong team. Doesn't seem you guys are like me, not really looking at the Charlotte side of this game. I don't think you need to. Part of the appeal of Cleveland, obviously, is just all the minutes that they're going to get. And in the NBA, like we've talked about, it's not the NFL. You don't need the run back necessarily. We'll move on to the next game, Detroit and Washington. Before we do, just a reminder, hit the like, hit the subscribe. It really does help us bring you guys all these free shows that we do on the YouTube channel. We're not going to ask for a specific amount for plays of the day or anything like that, but do us a favor, hit the like and hit the subscribe so you don't miss any of the content running through the channel here on the RPS YouTube channel. All right, let's get to the next game, Detroit and Washington. The Wizards, 13.5-point favorites here at home, 221 total. Injuries galore on Detroit, obviously. They just, pretty much just shut it down, haven't they, JT? I think it's kind of fair to say with Detroit. It does look like Killian Hayes going to get another start at point guard. We talked about him a little bit earlier. Jaden Ivey out, Alec Burks out, Cade Cunningham out, Bagley is out, Isaiah Stewart is out, Bogdanovich is out, Isaiah Livers, is this new? Did he just get ruled out? I'm seeing
Isaiah Livers is out, yeah.
Yeah, Diallo is out. Like, this team is extremely shorthanded tonight. Somehow, Rubio, they'll still find a way to screw us over a little bit. Seems like Corey Joseph is questionable. That is kind of weirdly, shockingly important news here because, eventually, if you take enough guys out of the equation, the guys that are left almost have to play. So I do think he matters for Killian Hayes. For RJ Hampton, I think would become a pretty interesting play. He's interesting even if Joseph goes, but if Joseph's out, RJ Hampton becomes interesting. I'm seeing Rodney Magruder, Rubio, as perhaps the highest owned play on this slate, which I'll probably go elsewhere, honestly, if that's going to be the case on Rodney Magruder. I know he's 3,500 and is going to have to play, but I don't know if I can do that. Omer Nuri, who we talked about, looks like an awesome play at 3,800. And then probably, Rubio, just like last night, the center minutes between Wiseman and Jalen Duren probably going to be split right down the middle. Last night, they both played 24 minutes. Listen, it could go 30-18 in either direction, depending on foul trouble, who plays better. But you got to start with basically the baseline assumption that they're both just going to split those minutes down the middle, which I think makes them kind of tough plays, even though they did both get there last night. On the Washington side, the big news, Kyle Kuzma is out. And, based on who's out for Detroit, we shouldn't need to belabor the point. This is an amazing matchup for the Washington Wizards, who are still fighting to get into the playoffs. They do still want to win this game. I think it looks like an amazing spot to me for Kristaps Porzingis. Danny Avdia, I think, is an interesting play as well. So, yeah, right off the bat, these two 7 p.m. Eastern time games, you'll see a lot of people have, 4 or 5 players from these games, I think, is very possible. So 2 important games here. Rubio, let's throw it back to you. What do you see, Detroit and Washington?
Yeah, you kind of hit it again, like Magruder, 3.5. It's one of those plays where, we know his career path by now. He's not a huge high PPM player, but, man, if he's going to get 32 minutes, he also gives us that small forward eligibility, and he did just drop 31. Like, you can see why people are on him, and he also shot 14 times, which was pretty high.
And 4 or 5 from 3 he needed to shoot.
Yep, to get exactly. So, one of those things where I get it more than if I saw like Ricky Rubio at 3.3, even though I love Rubio and stuff, he's a guard only, but Magruder at least has that 3.5 small forward eligibility. And then I'm looking at RJ Hampton, like 3.3. And this is one of those things. I think it would matter more if Corey Joseph gets ruled out, but he's a guy I'm talking about. He has 25 plus potential, probably 30 plus potential if the minutes are going to be there for him. We know that, his whole career, he's always had this hope around him that he's, going to be an impact player. He's going to be a scorer. We want to see that. And then Omer he got almost all the minutes at the 4 with no Bagley and stuff. His minutes seems very secure in that mid-30s. And, we rode him down early on this season with the Thunder just a little bit. And then I think last year with the Thunder even. So if he's playing mid-30 minutes, that's where the projection has him at. God, yeah, it's tough not to play him, especially when I want to stack all these guards and stuff. If I want to spend up at guard, I'll spend down at forward. And those 3 seem like the easiest plays. I don't trust Killian Hayes' workload. I don't trust the centers. I do think that's 24 minutes apiece. I don't really want to fiddle with that. I'll just fiddle with the 3 value plays under 4K. And then when I flip it over to the Wizard side of the ball, I'm worried slightly a little bit about the spread. I'm not worried much about for guys like Omer or guys like RJ Hampton. But for Porzingis, he just dropped 50 on these guys just a week ago or so or something like that. And we always know without Kuzma, he's definitely going to get a big bump. So I'm only worried about spread for a guy like that. And then Denny, of course, 4K forward eligibility. Not bad. I do question his upside. He did hit the glass very hard last time they had a forward out. Just didn't really end up getting there in the end. And I do question if he has that 30-plus upside that I kind of want. He is only 4K, though. Maybe I'm kind of moving the goalpost for him just slightly.
We've seen a lot of big games from Avdia over the course of the season. If you look at the last 4 games, it looks rough. But, awesome spot here, right, against Detroit. I think this is a really good bounce-back spot for Avdia. I'm kind of hoping that the recent poor run of performance will kind of keep his ownership in check. And he's going to get ownership for sure. I do think, yeah, go ahead, finish up, Ruby. I didn't mean to.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like we have that early season bias. He paid off early in the season. We did really good, but guys like him, sometimes they hit a wall, and his shooting numbers have gone down drastically, and his shooting from deep has also been a huge hindrance for him. So I do like him. Don't get me wrong; he's not a bad play at all, but he's definitely one of those guys where I think we're starting to see a little bit of fall off in his game, and it's not very surprising. The NBA season's a long grind, and this is the first time that he's really gotten huge, consistent minutes early on in the season. His legs are just, to me, it's one of those gut things. If I'm going to make a stand, probably get me a little bit different. He's a great play, but I'll probably be fading and hoping that shooting numbers kind of remain pretty subpar.
Yeah, that was kind of my question, JT, with Avdia's. The game log looks like he's hit a wall. I honestly can't claim to have watched the last couple of Wizards games. So, see, I don't know if I'd be able to tell anyway if he's not getting a lift on his jumper or something like that. But yeah, your thoughts, JT, here on Detroit. I do think the Livers being out, I was kind of on the fence a little bit about Umanori, but with Livers out there, man, I do think those minutes look pretty secure. Your thoughts here on this game, Detroit-Washington, JT?
Yeah, I'll start with the Detroit side. Coming off, they're on a back-to-back. They're coming off a game where they led at one point by, I think it was 33 points against Indiana. They should get smoked here. They should get absolutely fucking ragdolled by the Wizards, which is why if you're looking for a player to bounce back, well, the Detroit Pistons are your team as the opponent, which is why I almost feel better about Avdia than almost anyone else on this team, including Bradley Beal and Kristaps Porzingis. It doesn't mean I won't have them. I just don't know if I'm looking at them in the main lineup just because, yes, Kuzma is out, but there are still other guys there. And if this Detroit team comes in with the tired legs from playing the game, they've got 8.5 bodies, the team is going nowhere. I said this on Friday night that what we've seen from the Pistons all season long, surprisingly, is that they do play hard for Dwayne Casey, but I think that has limitations. I think the body has limitations when they've been going at this for 2 weeks straight now, just a shorthanded team. So I am with you. RJ Hampton is probably my favorite play from this team. Omiori is number 2. I don't think I'm touching anyone else. I'm definitely not paying $6,200 for Killian Hayes on this slate with all these other point guards. And I'm really leaning towards, in my main team, playing Avdia, maybe playing Beal, but again, there's some games later that we're going to talk about where there's some really good plays. You've got some really good plays in the Oklahoma City and Brooklyn game. You've got some good plays depending on how the news breaks either way in the Portland, New York game. So I want to leave a spot open because if all of a sudden the Wizards are up as opposed to what the Pistons did last night to the Pacers, if the Wizards are up by 33 after the half, it's going to be lights out for a lot of these guys, and I think they'll have nice games. I think you'll still get your 40, 45 points from Beal, from Porzingis, but I don't think you're looking at the 70 that you could get from some of these games later on that are looking like they're going to be very competitive.
I can see the case being made for playing at most one of Porzingis and Beal. I think if both of those guys are going off, this game's probably getting ugly in a hurry, and they're not going to get that fourth quarter run. So that does make sense. I do prefer Porzingis between the two, partly because of positions. I just love the guards, obviously, tonight. But I do think both guys are good plays. Avdia, obviously, I've seen some questions in chat about Corey Kispert. I'm not a big Kispert guy. So, yeah, Rubio, I see you're shaking your head. I'm probably not going there. Rubio's a no. JT, your thoughts on Kispert?
I want to pull up what the minutes are here because the thing with Kispert is I don't even think Kispert gets the blowout run. Like, yeah, no way. So Kispert coming off a game against Philly where they were down big. That's why he played 33 minutes. He shot 9 for 13 and 3 of 7. Yeah. I don't think that's happening again. I am not going to be dipping my toe in the Kispert waters.
All right. He's a guy that we're talking about. Obviously, he hit 30 last game, because he shot damn well, but he does not have 25 plus upside consistent, and he's 4K. Yeah, not on my watch.
3 for 3 here on no Corey Kispert. We'll keep it moving to the only 7:30 game, Denver and Toronto. This game in Toronto, Denver though favored by 2, 228 total. Not a ton of injury news in this one. Jamal Murray was questionable for most of the day, but did get ruled in just kind of a few minutes before we jumped on the show. So we did get that news. I don't know, JT, we'll throw it back to you first on this one. I don't have a lot here that I love. Obviously, you can always play the Joker in any matchup, including this one. I do prefer to play him when he's at home typically. And, you know, I do like kind of spending up at some of the guard spots. Garland, maybe a Lillard. We talked about Mobley, Porzingis. I don't think personally I'm going to be able to get to Joker tonight. And, you know, again, on the road, kind of a tough matchup. Obviously, he can do it against anybody. I'll be honest, playing a couple of lineups tonight. I don't have anything from this game in my lineup, and honestly, nothing that's getting real close at the moment. Am I missing anything here, JT?
I don't think so. I mean, Joker's great. He's coming off maybe perhaps two of the easiest matchups right now in the entire NBA, with a game against the Spurs and then an absolute monster ceiling game against the Brooklyn Nets at home where he nearly went for 90 fantasy points. I think that Toronto's going to treat him a lot more rudely than either of those teams did. And you've got a fully healthy team. The prices are up here really on both sides. Siakam has not been the same since Jakob Poeltl got there. Poeltl now at 7K. This game's simply a cross-off for me. Can't play everything. I think it'll be close. It might be fun to watch, but it is not a game that I am interested in for DFS tonight.
Yeah, we would need big news in this one before I ended up on any pieces from Denver, Toronto. Doesn't seem like we're going to get that. Rubio, do you see anything here between the Raptors and the Nuggets?
No, I mean, we'd expect the Nuggets to turn it around, and they had a few chances to do so. There's 3 straight losses. Murray is in. If Murray was out, I had Bruce Brown, even Jokic and stuff. But one guy I do want to mention, just because we have seen 50-point upside and centers against the Nuggets have been doing pretty decent of late as well. Jakob Poeltl never comes in owned, has that 50 DK upside. They are giving him a ton of run, 32, 34 minutes. I fiddled with him in that mid-range kind of style of build at like 7K. It's not like the worst play, but he's the only guy I consider. Everyone else I'm crossing off, though.
Yeah, none of us very interested in that Denver-Toronto game, so we'll keep it moving. Brooklyn, OKC. This one I think is definitely a better game to attack than certainly Denver and Toronto. Pretty big total in this one, sitting at 233. OKC is favored by 1.5 points. SGA gonna play. They've talked about limiting his minutes. Hasn't really happened. I mean, 37, 36, 37 minutes. So they haven't really stuck to that. And I don't know. I guess you just kind of have to assume that he's going to get his normal minutes at this point. I believed it when they said it, but 3 games in a row hasn't happened for SGA. So 9,400, really nice price tag for him. I like the matchup certainly against Brooklyn. So I think he would be my favorite play, Rubio, on the OKC side. I love what I've seen from Jalen Williams, the wing version. But he's getting a little bit of expensive right now, I think, to play. Giddey, probably not going to play him with SGA and Williams both in there. So, yeah, kind of SGA or bust for me, at least on the OKC side. And then Brooklyn, hard to know what Brooklyn's going to do from night to night. I do think they're a little bit interesting. The one guy I'm looking at most closely is Nick Claxton, which I do think the best way to attack OKC is on the interior. He's sitting at 6,600. Could see a big double type performance from him. So yeah, I do like some pieces in this game. Talk to me, Brooklyn and OKC, Rubio.
Yeah, you hit the hammer on the nail yet again, DC. SGA is the only guy I'm considering on the Thunder side of the ball. Jalen Williams has been excellent, but this is a really tough matchup. He'll probably match up with Mikal Bridges a lot, and I just don't ever entertain that for wings going against, well, it used to be the Suns and now the Nets. And SGA, it does seem like they have one goal in mind. First team All-NBA, well-deserved. And I think they're trying to make sure that he gets his numbers. And I think just the fact that he gets to the line so often, 9,400. I mean, we used to pay almost like, 11K for him at times. So it seems a bit cheap, and the total is not suffering at all. So I think SGA is one of those guys who I look at, I really want. If we do get news come on these late games, like Lillard or something like that, maybe my thought will change. But with the 8 p.m. lock, he's in my lineup right now. I'm a big fan of his tonight. And then you flip it over to the Nets side of the ball. Mikal Bridges, he is under 8K now, to be an 8.2, not too long ago. And I do like him a lot. It's just the Lou Dort thing, but I don't think it really matters for Bridges. Dude's just usage monster. Spencer Dinwiddie has just been crushing of late, back-to-back games with 50 plus. And the thing he did it with was 5 of 15 shooting. Sure, he got 16 assists, but even then he still paces for well over 40 if he just gets like 10 dimes. So it's a couple of options here. It's a great game environment. I like what you said about Claxton. We have seen centers, do really well, especially centers who can get it done with stocks. I'm always a big fan of them. And those are the three guys. I wouldn't mind like a mini game stack, like Bridges with SGA or Bridges with Dinwiddie, but then you're talking about 2 guard spots. So I'd probably do Bridges. Well, Bridges is shooting guard only still. That's the frustrating part. I don't know why he's shooting guard only. If he was small forward eligible, I'd be looking at him a lot more intensely. But yeah, center only, shooting guard only, and point guard only is the real challenge for the Nets with the 3 guys I'm interested in.
Yeah, the big, you said it. I mean, the big detriment for me with Bridges is that you can't play him at the forward spot, which seems a little ridiculous not to be able to play him at either wing position, but it is what it is. And I don't think I'll personally be able to get there at shooting guard. Dinwiddie is interesting. JT, OKC really good at defending pick and roll ball handlers, which is a lot of what Dinwiddie does. So it's kind of why I prefer going to Claxton, who they do seem to kind of funnel the pass toward the big man. So yeah, Claxton, I think for me at least, to play over Dinwiddie. But what do you see, JT, OKC in Brooklyn?
Yeah, very similar to you guys. You talked about Lou Dort there. Everybody talks about Lou Dort. Who's Dort going to guard? Well, he guarded C.J. McCollum in the matchup against the Pelicans, and C.J. McCollum had a pretty good night. I think it's between Dinwiddie or Bridges, and if Daniel is like most coaches, which we know he's not because of the way that his rotations are, but he's watching film on the last couple of games. He's going to see those were big Dinwiddie games. I think you'll probably see more of him on Dinwiddie, which is going to free up Bridges, and it's going to free up Big Nick Claxton. So those 2 guys and Shea are where I'm looking here. If Jalen Williams starts here, we've seen centers. I talked about what Jokic did. Obviously, that is a special case, but before him, it was Brook Lopez. It was Bobby Portis. It was DeAndre Ayton. So centers have done really, really well against this Brooklyn team. Jalen Williams is a guy that I would look at his price point. Take some shots in multi-entry. That's maybe the 4th guy that I would go to here. I like this game quite a bit to get off of some of those other spots. We did get some news. Corey Joseph is available to play, but he played a ton of minutes last night. His price is up. I don't think you see the same minutes. It doesn't change my assessment of Detroit. And then people have been asking about Nick Richards from Charlotte. I understand he did well against the Cavs last game, but the price went up $1,000. And something we saw last night where Isaiah Jackson's price went up $1,700, Jalen Smith's price went up $1,200, and they just did not have the same level of productivity. So I'll be off of Nick Richards at the 5K price point and like this OKC Brooklyn game quite a bit.
Yeah, I think that that all makes sense. Definitely some good pieces. OKC and Brooklyn should be a good game there. We'll move it next to the Lakers and the New Orleans Pelicans. This one expected to be close. Lakers favored by 1 going into New Orleans, 226.5 total. Not a ton of injury news, but there is one very significant piece, JT. We are waiting on Brandon Ingram, who has missed the last 2 games due to an ankle injury. He's currently questionable. Obviously, a real injury that he's got, and he's missed 2 games in a row. So, I think a decent chance that he does miss this game again. If he does, kind of clear, I think, where the usage goes. CJ McCollum picks up a big portion of the scoring load that Ingram, typically carries for the team. McCollum, I think, his upside from night to night is not as high as some, but I think a really good bet for 40 to 50 fantasy points, assuming Ingram does sit out. So that's certainly big news on the Lakers side. They obviously need Anthony Davis with LeBron out. D'Angelo Russell's had some decent games recently. So there are some pieces to look at on the Lakers. But obviously the biggest news in this game, JT, is the Brandon Ingram news. How are you dealing with that? Is that something that you're going to save a guard spot for, potentially playing CJ McCollum?
It is big news. This is a big game. It's a big real-life game because the Pelicans sit right inside, just barely inside the play-in with Oklahoma City breathing down their neck. Of course, we're really not sure. Rubio mentioned it early on in this show. Really not sure what Oklahoma City is trying to do right here because they have a really good chance if they played their guys to get into the play-in, with how injured some of these teams are. Of course, Portland a couple of spots behind them. So am I planning for it? I don't think I'm really planning for it. The prices are up here a little bit. So, I mean, Garland is a priority over either of these guys in this game. You know, D'Angelo Russell has been playing very, very well. Now they go on the road. This has been a good spot for opposing point guards. And, you know, D'Lo's showed us something here where, you know, maybe he wasn't all that motivated to play in Minnesota all season long. So, of course, Anthony Davis is an intriguing spend up here. Opposing centers since the Zion injury have done fairly well against the Pelicans. We've seen, though, right? AD is hit or miss, and I don't know if the way that I'm building, at least in my main lineup, lends itself to even getting up to a 10-8 player, right? I think it's going to be more balanced just because of the mid-range that we have here tonight. Not really considering anybody else on the Lakers. And then the Pelicans, the prices are all up, and we have that news. So I will say if Brandon Ingram is in and does not have a minutes restriction, he has always played very well against the Lakers, but he does seem to be legitimately banged up over the course of this last month or so.
Yeah, for sure. Rubio, they've kind of handed the keys to D'Angelo Russell a little bit. They moved Dennis Schroeder to the bench, which if you look at who's surrounding Russell in that starting lineup, you know, you've obviously got Anthony Davis, but the other guys, Troy Brown, Beasley, Vanderbilt, are all very low usage, you know, kind of shooters only types. And then Anthony Davis, even himself, is not really a guy who creates a ton of offense. So you've seen two big games in a row from D'Angelo Russell, nearly 50 fantasy points in each. Certainly the matchup here, I think, is totally fine against New Orleans. So, yeah, Russell, maybe a kind of perhaps a little bit of a sneakier play. Your thoughts on him and anything else in this game, along with the Ingram news, obviously?
I'm selling the Russell stock. I'm glad he played well on national TV against the Knicks. I'm glad he did well against Toronto. But the thing is, Darvin Ham does weird things with this rotation. I think he got 4 or 5 extra minutes because of how well he was playing last game. I do have legitimate worries about the rotation. I feel like there's times where he's playing really well. He gets limited to 28 minutes. And, you know, LeBron's out. Maybe they have no choice offensively and stuff, but we have seen him limited to like 28 minutes in games with the Lakers. And it's been that way with the Minnesota Timberwolves at times too, where it just felt like sometimes his minutes were a little bit shorted. Maybe I'm going to be late to react, but I don't trust Darvin Ham at all. And that's the issue. I think if you guaranteed me D'Angelo Russell 35 minutes, I would definitely be entertaining it, but it's more to do with Darvin Ham. Anthony Davis came out last game and said, I didn't do enough. And now he heads back to his old franchise in New Orleans. I entertain it at 10-8 if I am going double center, or if I just need a center in general. I'm still building my team here. I do have a lot of interest in AD. I think if anyone has 60-point upside, you know, at the position, it's him. He's flashed at times without LeBron, and someone that I'm willing to buy a little bit low on. Obviously, the last couple games have been really lackluster, but going back to his old stomping ground where, he's going to want to put on a show, and he did say so last game. He just wasn't good enough. I'd like to do that. And for the Pelicans, I think Ingram's going to play. We see it. I just think that he's not going to miss a game against the Lakers, like JT said. He always plays well against them. I'm going to cross off the Pelican side of the ball. There's just a lot of mouths to feed, a lot of rotational pieces trying to mesh together right now. In terms of for DFS, they do a good job and stuff, but going to cross off that side of the ball and just focus on AD maybe if I go anyone from this game.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. We'll see with Russell. Do you prefer – we'll get to the Portland game, but I'm looking maybe at my last spot, Emmanuel Quickly versus Russell, and that both 7-100 at that guard spot. I do think both guys could be in line for big games, so that might be a decision I have to make as we get closer to lock here. 21 minutes to go before we do get the lock on the first two big games of the day. JT, you mentioned we did get the news that Corey Joseph is in. Let's discuss that real quickly, because obviously that game is, among, if not the most critical of the entire slate. Like you mentioned, JT, I don't think Corey Joseph himself comes into play, but it does certainly take, for me, it basically completely takes Killian Hayes. I don't think we were on him anyway, but I'm not going to play him now with Joseph available. And it does certainly reduce my level of interest. I still think you can play him But RJ Hampton now I don't think becomes quite as appealing, and kind of the same thing for Magruder, right? It's just Detroit is so thin that even a guy like Corey Joseph can take the appeal off of some of those cheaper value plays. So your thoughts just in general on Joseph being rolled in?
Yeah, I'm not playing Joseph. He played a lot of minutes last night, and this is something that Dwayne Casey doesn't do, is play these guys big minutes back to back. The thing about Hampton, he's 3,300. He played 24 minutes last night. There's literally nobody else. So he is going to play at least that 24 minutes against this Wizards defense. And I suspect a lot of that he may get 26, he may get 28. And some of those minutes also may come when this game is sealed away. So I still think Hampton is my favorite. Hampton and Omarui are the two guys that I'm interested in on the Pistons. Doesn't really do a whole lot because even if, like I said, even if he was in, he's not playing the same amount of minutes he did last night.
Yeah, your thoughts, Rubio, on the Joseph being ruled in?
Yeah, I think like the biggest thing that Isaiah Livers being rolled out and stuff like that earlier in the day, like it's still a 9-man rotation, and as much as I wanted to make fun of Rodney McGruder plays, I have him right now at 3.5 in the small forward spot. It's the small forward eligibility that does it for me. I'm a slut for small.
You're going to be sweating those 3-point attempts, hoping they.
I'll tell you, there's nothing like sweating Rodney McGruder 3-point attempts. I mean, that's what gets us going in the bar. You know, we're heading down to the bar, and I'll be Rodney McGruder's biggest fan. But I think it's a 9-man rotation. I think Livers being rolled out is a bigger deal than I probably initially just realized. But he's been when he has been healthy, he's been 30+ minutes. That's 30+ minutes that weren't there last night. And listen, I think I'm just gonna rock with forwards at for the Pistons, and I definitely get the RJ Hampton play. I have a utility position open right now. I might rock 3 Pistons, and it would be Hampton as the third. So something I'm debating, but definitely a bigger deal than I realized.
Let me just give you these stats about Rodney McGruder.
Right? I know he's a terrible player.
No, it's not that. Talking sense into Rubio for me.
It's not that. It's not that. I think you're playing him because you can't fathom playing Denny Avdia, right? So here's the case against McGruder. All right. We know that he is capable of putting up a 4.75 in 20 minutes, right? He's going to play more than that. But last night, 31 minutes, 7 of 14 from the field, including 4 of 5 from 3. I mean, you've got a better chance of Jesus Christ walking into that room and pulling the green curtain aside than Rodney McGruder repeating that performance. And actually, Quinn is so upset at the mention of Rodney McGruder that she's barking here in the background.
We got a simultaneous appearance from Quinn and Kurt. So,
he said sliding behind that green screen. The Kurt had to act like Jesus Christ himself. I mean, it is the McGruder Advia debate right here. You're probably right. Maybe I need this extra 500. Maybe I'll manifest Rodney McGruder outperforming Denny tonight. That's what I'll do. I'll manifest it.
Yeah, we'll see. We got to keep moving. We do got 3 more games to talk about. First one, 2 bad teams here, Orlando and San Antonio. It is Orlando who is favored by 6 going on the road, 232.5 total. Not a ton of news for Orlando, kind of status quo for them over these last few games. I was kind of looking at Paulo Banchero earlier to fill a forward spot. Just the matchup so good against San Antonio. 7,700, a lot to pay, but I do like his chances for a good game. And in the Spurs side, I mean, this team's obviously kind of been in the gutter all year long, missing Trey Jones and Malachi Branham for this game. Branham got injured last game, so they really are down, point guards. They just don't have much left. Jeremy Sokan did get ruled in, and then we are waiting on Keldon Johnson, who is questionable. It is pretty big news, I think. The way I'm looking at this one, Rubio, I like Devontae Graham quite a bit, whether or not Keldon Johnson plays, but I do think he gets a significant bump if Keldon is out. But it does make me nervous, man, going to the Spurs, who have absolutely nothing to play for. I do think Graham's upside is pretty significant here, and we have seen some pretty big games from him, even off the bench for the Spurs. So I don't know. 5K, I mean, he's clearly could get you 40. I don't think there's any question about it. I do like him a little bit more because the Spurs are at home. It's like a little bit, I don't know, harder or more morally decrepit to pull the plug when you're at home in front of your home fans. But Popovich, he might do it anyway. But yeah, Graham really the guy I'm looking at. I think Vassell is somewhat interesting. And then the Orlando side, like I said, Banchero really the guy that I'm looking at. What do you see here, Rubio?
Yeah, just like the speed through it. I am surprised. Like it's frustrating that the Magic have starting to like shorten the rotation just a little bit later on in the season rather than earlier in the season. Like Wendell Carter Jr., he plays 37 minutes. Their overtime helped a little bit last game, and same with Fultz and stuff. But we target the Spurs defense. Fultz, Banchero, and Wendell Carter Jr. all have to make like a mini short list here. And if you want to play one, it makes a lot of sense. Do we trust the coach enough? And that's the biggest challenge. But God, I can see one of these guys just going nuclear. And Banchero has been great of late. He started to find his legs. He had that lull earlier in the season, after his initial awesome start. Fultz, point guards kill the Spurs. Fultz getting 33, 34 minutes is very intriguing. And they're not going to be owned. No one wants to play these Magic guys at all. Maybe Wendell Carter gets a little bit of ownership. But it's like not – they're three good plays. Then you flip it over to the Spurs side of the ball. Branham, that frustration, with him leaving early as chalk last game. And I don't trust it. I don't trust Pop. I think if anyone I trust is Devin Vassell. Maybe he has a 35, 40-point upside as the main ball handler at times. But even like last game, it was a mixture with Zach Collins, KBD, and like Devontae Graham all sharing like that distribution role. They all had 3 or more assists, and it's just not a team I want to trust tonight.
Yeah, that makes sense. I haven't looked up the Rookie of the Year odds, but I assume Jalen Williams has been closing the gap a little bit on Banchero. I actually like Williams better long term. Banchero a good player too, but yeah, that'll be interesting. But you mentioned Rubio, the kind of the individual incentives. Neither of these teams have much left to play for beyond that. JT, what do you see here? So you seem like a guy who wouldn't want to trust the Spurs if you can avoid it.
No, it's been a painful experience with this team, but I will say, Devontae Graham, the 5K price tag is the thing I struggle with because there's no way around him getting minutes tonight with Jones and with Branham being ruled out. It's just, I think these other players are just miles better. He's just in a weird price point where he could get 35 or 40, I guess, and it might not matter. Just because of, the price points that you've got Garland at, that you've got Shea at, you've got Bridges at, Beal. Then you get to the games that are a little bit later. So probably will not be going here a ton. And then on the Orlando side, I think it comes down to Wendell Carter Jr., he played 40-some minutes his last game out, which is unusual. I think this team might be trying to make a push to get in the playoffs. Carter Jr., one of the best players here on the team. So I don't mind him or Banchero. I think the guards, though, there are just too many of them, and the price point's just a little bit too high.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said there. Graham, really the guy that I'm focusing on from San Antonio. I'm probably not going to end up on any Orlando myself. 2 more games to talk about. It is 2 games that start 2 hours after all of the others, which was kind of what we alluded to at the beginning of the show, where, if you're saving up for Portland, I think is kind of the obvious spot that people would leave roster spots open for. You might not have all that many options to swap. We'll get to that game. First, though, let's talk about Milwaukee and Phoenix. Obviously, I think a potential finals preview here if Kevin Durant can come back healthy for the playoffs. For this game, expected to be close. Milwaukee favored by 1, 231.5 total. We saw the return of Giannis last night, put up 69, very nice 69 fantasy points. Middleton going to sit this game, so certainly Giannis, Drew Holiday in play. Grayson Allen also out for Milwaukee. I think you can go to the main Milwaukee guys, certainly, if you want to. Possible they want to make a little bit of a statement here. And then, Phoenix still, of course, without Kevin Durant. Chris Paul, Devin Booker look like good plays. Looks like Brooke Lopez, possibly. I'm seeing possible suspension, questionable. It's from Basketball Monster. I'm not sure, honestly, if he's going to sit or not. But Yeah, I think an interesting game here overall. Rubio, let's throw to you. What do you see, Milwaukee, Phoenix?
Yeah, this is a game that Giannis always has to be entertained by. It is back-to-back for the Bucks, right? They did play last night, played late last night as well. You're going to see a slight rotation mix-up. I think Chris Middleton's out, so Joe Ingles is going to fill that role too. I don't see a bunch of guys that I have any interest in. I'll have interest in Giannis just because he always has the highest upside on the slate, along with Jokic and stuff. Then on the Phoenix side of the ball, yeah, I can't stand Ayton. Devin Booker, he felt like he went off last night. He still didn't even pay off that tag really at all. Chris Paul, 7-5, just not really worth the hassle. It's a gross game. I'm not playing Torrey Craig at all. He's under 4K. The minutes aren't safe at all right now with him, and even Okogie, he got going pretty late last game. It's just a bunch of inconsistent players and not a whole lot of interest in these two teams right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'd probably not go into this game either. JT, what do you see here?
Yeah, it's a little tough here with these guys on a back-to-back. You've got Ayton, I think, is maybe a guy that I might play some in multi-entry just because of how well centers have done. But I also hate centers on back-to-backs. I hate bigs on back-to-backs. So not a lot here. Maybe him, maybe some shots on Chris Paul. I don't think this is a slate where Giannis is, even if he gets 65 or 70, I think the mid-range is just so much better. And I don't think there's enough really good value to be able to afford a 12K player on this slate.
Yeah, that makes sense. We'll talk about the last game here in a second. We do have just under 10 minutes before lock. So let's go back. We did get news. Corey Kispert going to get the start for the Wizards. I thought it would be Avdia in the starting lineup. Looks like it's going to be Kispert who replaces Kyle Kuzma. We talked about potentially kind of hitting the wall for Avdia. Starting Kispert over him maybe makes me think the coach kind of sees the same thing. I don't really want to play. I'm not going to play Kispert at 3,900. I think a lot of people might though, Rubio. But yeah, I'm taking Avdia out of my lineup personally. I don't think I'm going to go to Kispert. What do you see here? What do you think of that Washington news?
Yeah, I mean, God, if I'm on Magruder, I guess I can't really make that much fun of people playing Kispert.
No, you can't.
I'm taking Magruder over Kispert any day of the week. I can say that. Yeah, I thought Denny might have gotten the start too. They have done this before where Avdia comes off the bench, plays 30 minutes and stuff. So I think if you're on him, maybe it kind of limits the minutes upside. But then on the other side of the ball, we get Hampton starting now too. And it's damn, probably rocking 3 Detroit. Probably rocking 3 Detroit tonight, but maybe Magruder.
Yeah, we got Hampton starting for Detroit as well. So it's Hayes, Hampton, Umanyori, Wiseman, and who's starting at small forward? Oh yeah, Magruder, of course.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Quite the starting lineup there for Detroit. JT, your thoughts there on the Washington and Detroit news?
Yeah, I think that I don't take a lot out of it. I think they like Avdia as being the main scoring threat on the second unit. I still think he's going to do that. So I still think he's a good play. And I don't know. I'm not. I mean, you could play Kispert 3,900, but I might consider playing him over Magruder if I was looking at Magruder. Sorry, Rubio, but I don't think I want to play him.
What are your thoughts on Hampton? He was your favorite anyway.
Hampton's in my lineup. Hampton's in my main lineup. So
yeah, it makes sense.
All
right, that's Detroit and Washington. Obviously, significant news there as we get closer to lock here. 5 minutes to go. If you haven't yet, hit the like, hit the subscribe. Like's a little bit low, very hurtful, as my friend JT Hayes would say. Does help us bring you these shows. So do that before we get out of here in the next 5 or 10 minutes or so. But let's go quickly to wrap it up. New York Knicks, Portland Trailblazers. Obviously, significant news here. Really on both teams. Jalen Brunson going to sit or doubtful to play, which we assume he's going to miss. It will be Quickly who gets the start at point guard. He's been kind of up and down in this role a little bit, but I do think he's got huge upside, especially against a really, really soft, no matter who's in there, Portland kind of backcourt. So I do think Quickly is pretty interesting. And then obviously Portland. Listen, if Dame plays, he's an awesome play, I think, at 10.5K. Jeremy Grant also questionable, and he's had a very, very big role on this team as well since being acquired. He's been there all year. But yeah, Grant's an important player for them. And then Knicks. I do think if Brunson misses Rubio, I mean, quickly Randall, Grimes is cheap if you wanted to go there. RJ Barrett, they definitely got some interesting pieces. So certainly not a last game that we can completely overlook. Your thoughts here, Rubio?
Yeah, it's the tough part. We definitely can't overlook it. The Dame news, the Jeremy Grant news, those are two very important things. It kind of opens up a little bit of value late. If you did want to kind of leave it up there late, you can. You're taking a risk with guys like Nazir Little or even like Anthony Simons or Cam Reddish. Cam Reddish hates the Knicks organization for what it's worth. He's been talking mad stuff over the past couple of weeks or so, saying he really, he didn't feel respected there. It's all politics. He wants to go off against these Knicks. If Dame Lillard misses, even Grant, I could see Reddish having a big game. I'll probably be in Ohio to bet his props when that happens. But for the Knicks side of the ball, Barrett dropped 30 last game and still didn't really completely crush. 7K is a tall tag for him. I liked him better when we played him at 5-3 like last Friday. I'm not interested in Julius Randle. He did really well. He played inspired ball against his former team, the Lakers. Seems like he always goes off against the Lakers, but Josh Hart has definitely come in and kind of vultured his role a little bit, especially on the glass. And it's like one of those things where Randall needs every fantasy point he can get, but Tibbs does run these guys out there. Like quickly, you wouldn't be surprised if he plays 40 minutes. Like I got no problem as any of these guys the last piece. And quickly is probably my guy on the Knicks and then Reddish on the Blazers, but you're banking on news.
Yeah. Your thoughts here quickly, JT.
Really tough to assess here without the news. I just made a lineup with Simons as a placeholder just in case. Good point that you guys brought up on Reddish. But, I think right now, question in here, Wendell Carter or Zach Collins, last man in? Easily Wendell Carter for me.
Agreed.
But yeah, it's tough. I think the guys I would go to are, quickly, potentially, Randall potentially, Dame if he's in, and Simons if he's not in. You could also play Reddish if Dame is out as well.
Yeah, that's all 8 games, and we have covered the most recent news as we kind of finalize our own lineups, get the core plays in. Obviously, anyone watching that's a member, you can get the core plays over on the page. Questions, D'Lo or quickly. I've seen a couple people ask that. I asked it myself, 10, 15 minutes ago. I think it's really close between those two guys. It would obviously be D'Lo if Brunson ends up playing. We don't think he will. It's close for me. It's honestly kind of a toss-up. It's something I'm still trying to decide. Do you guys have a lean on D'Angelo Russell or quickly?
I probably would go quickly if I was between those two right now. That's probably where I would go.
Yeah, I'm leaning the same way.
Yeah, you were kind of off the D'Lo train. I do really like both guys, and wouldn't even be opposed to playing them both if you wanted to go kind of a different direction, but tough. I do prefer, Garland as a priority over both those guys, to me at least. But yeah, you can certainly get those guys in there, in those last guard spots if you need to change things around a little bit. I do think that makes some sense. White Hot asks, Rubio, you playing SGA? Sounds like you were pretty interested in him.
Yeah, very much interested in SGA. Like if I, obviously it's a late core, but it'd be Garland, Omarui, McGruder, SGA, and RJ Hampton.
Yeah, Jake Swales says in chat, Reddish should get pretty good usage even with Dame in. Yeah, especially if Grant ends up missing, right? Then I think Reddish's role would grow. And potentially if they both miss, which I do think is very possible for the Blazers, Simons and Reddish, I think would both become pretty good plays at that point. Do we have a watch party tonight? I think we might. I'm not 100. No watch party tonight. Okay.
It might be NBA, but it's not the college basketball one that was planned.
Gotcha. Yeah, so we are kind of winding down here closer to lock. We've got all the news that we do need from those first 2 games. Not really anything we're waiting that we're going to get, in the next, I don't think, 10 minutes or so here. Denver, Toronto, none of us were on that game. Nobody questionable of note. So, that game kind of one that we're crossing off, and then you don't have any news until the Brandon Ingram news an hour from now. We'll probably get that in about half an hour. Again, I think it's pretty clear what to do there, right? McCollum becomes in play if Ingram sits, but I don't think there's a ton to do with that Ingram news either way. And yeah, that pretty much does it. Your final thoughts here, JT, on the slate? Anything you're watching as kind of the news comes in with your own lineups?
No, I was gonna the Knicks, not the Knicks, but the Portland Trailblazers news is pretty big. That Pelicans news is big. I was gonna give out a mini core here, but we kind of talked about it, right? In terms of the plays, I did end up with Beal and Avdia in my main lineup just because I couldn't make it work to get up to Shea with having Mobley and Garland, but I still like it because I was able to get Clax. I was able to get Bridges, who are the two guys that I'm really interested in on the Brooklyn side. So should be an interesting night.
Yeah, it'll be fast and furious for me. Got a lot of players from these early games. And so, yeah, we'll find out early if we've got a sweat or not. Rubio, your final thoughts here on this slate?
Yeah, I jammed the early games in. I got Porzingis, even though I didn't really want to. So I hope that game stays close. Your free college basketball bet, NKU Norse plus 19.5 against Houston, baby. Come on now. 16 seeds going to upset a 1.
There we go. I can't speak whether or not that's a good bet or not. I've never heard of that team before.
You know why it's a good bet? Because I went I love this college. I'll die.
Okay, yeah.
Did you play basketball for them? Did they give you the foundation that's going to help you?
I watched a lot of basketball this week. I watched a lot of basketball for them. You know, I really put my heart and soul. They gave us free tickets and free pizza to go to those games, and we still couldn't sell out.
All right, there you go.
Well, unfortunately, the watching the basketball didn't rub off on your own on-court skills, Rubio. But hey,
you're getting the smoke this weekend. You're getting the smoke. I'm saying it right now. I've been in the gym. You know, we're going to the gym tomorrow. I'm going to pump some iron. I'm going to take some steroids, and I'm going to go off on the RPS crew. I'm just saying it right now. The jump shot, it's 10 times better. I'm killing it this year. I'm killing it. We're going to stream the games too. You're going to see me beat Mangone. I think, hell, the spread should be 7.5. I'm not giving him that because I'm not a clown, but I'm going to beat him by 8 or more. I guarantee it. Guarantee it.
8 or more. And DC, one thing I know about DC is even if he needs to have paramedics come in and give him an IV, he's going to sit out there on the slab all day, throw shots up. I am going to bring the gloves, DC. I'm going to bring the gloves and bring the Major League Baseballs. I probably am not going to throw much harder than 68 miles an hour. The baseball shape I'm in, but we'll go ahead. We'll have a nice sketch one day while we watch these guys beat the absolute piss out of each other on the slab.
Absolutely. Looking forward to getting to the slab, tossing the ball around, and good time coming up at the Run Pure Sports Party. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hit the like, subscribe on your way out if you haven't. Of course, we've got the shows coming up all week long, and we'll keep it going even while we're throwing a few back in Cincinnati over the weekend. That'll do it for us. For JT, for Rubio, I'm DC. JT, get us out of here.